Hello, this is the Cirrus webinar. We're looking today at creating a winning warehouse strategy. Welcome to all of our attendees. Let me introduce myself. My name's Simon Shaw. I'm Managing Director of Cirrus Logistics. Cirrus is a specialist in supply chain design and optimization. We've got a lot of global customers in a lot of different verticals that we've been serving over 20 years, and we want to share some of that knowledge with you today. So we're going to have a look at primarily focusing in on the corner stores case study. We're going to be having a look at strategy and the framework associated with that, particularly around how we can validate that and manipulate the different aspects of that strategy using computer simulation. Going to be opportunity to ask some questions at the end, and we'll be running some polls through this, so please, when you see these polls come up, please respond to them. Thank you. Okay, so we think that it's incredibly important that you get your warehousing strategy right, and there has been occasions when some real headlines have been hitting the news where companies have been suffering multi-million-pound losses in their business, their share price tumbling. So I think it's undisputed the fact that the warehouse plays a very key role in today's businesses, and hopefully at the end of this seminar we'll understand a little bit more about how we can de-risk and prevent some of these things happening. So we can see here we've got the Corner Stores Limited board. The managing director has just stood up there and announced that the targets for next year are to grow the business by 10%. And you can see the colleagues around that table are all contemplating exactly what will that do in terms of their particular parts of the business. So, can the DC handle it? What spare capacity is there in terms of transport? Maybe they're looking to run a multi-channel fulfillment. What impact's that going to have now? All of these questions are things which we need to be answering. And for our first poll, we'd really like to ask the question of the audience in terms of if you were sat around that table now, how exactly would you respond to that? Okay, so as we said, warehousing is only one aspect. You obviously need to consider very much very many other things. For example, where do you physically locate your warehouse? Have you got sufficient transport? Maybe what peaks there are in supply. We talked about 10%. Is that going to come gradually? Is that going to come all at one go? So there's various different things which, as a business, you need to consider. But we are going to focus today just on the warehouse. However, we do have a whole program of webinars that we're going to be running, supported by white papers, and you can see on your screens now some of those that will be coming up shortly. You're going to have access to that via Cirrus Logistics, so please keep a watch on our website and register those if those are of interest to you. So strategy then. I think fundamentally it's very important that we can create a framework for our decision making. We need to be able to look at and consider various different aspects of things. The data itself, however, is not just enough. We need to be able to manipulate that data, enable us to compare different outcomes. We need to be able to investigate different scenarios, and we need to look to see what impact that will have back down in terms of maybe storage capacity, staffing, various different changes, perhaps impacts to our customer service levels. So this framework needs to work across the business and ultimately be validated and de-risked. It's important that really we're looking here to de-risk it and remove any gut feel and subjectivity and have a very objective structure to our decision making. This diagram maybe looks a little bit complicated at first glance, but ultimately what we're trying to depict here is that it's all very well and good talking at a very high level, but we need to start to drill down from that high level 10% demand, and we need to consider that at various different levels within the organization. So maybe starting out by the business offering and contracting to certain different customer service levels, maybe then considering what capacity, what stock holding it's going to be, what are the staffing and equipment costs that we really want to be maintaining as our operational costs within that, what real estate are we going to be using, and then really coming right down to operationally to understand what impact that will have on our inbound and outbound processes and replenishment, etc., and any other sort of further work that you're doing. So it's very important that we review our strategy at these three levels. Cirrus, we strongly believe that the way to actually control and the perfect framework for these decisions is computer simulation. I don't know how many of you have actually come across computer simulation. It is increasingly being adopted by businesses, and what it enables you to do is provide a means of actually doing some analytics, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. It enables you to start to drive and ask those sort of what-if questions. It enables you to go down to very much a process level and understand whether you've got any conflictions within your operation. And then it enables you to present back to the business in maybe graphical form or even in visual form, in terms of either 3D visualization of the issues or a movie, in order to put across the benefits of that strategy that you're defining. See here we've got a 2D layout. We've also got down at the bottom here, if I can just click play, I don't know whether that's going to come across very well across the webinar, but we can start to see that suddenly a warehouse can be represented very accurately, and we can start to see how that will really play out as we start to change and influence the workload that is put upon it. Okay, so let's come back to our challenge and our case study of the 10%. So let's just consider how we can actually go about solving that problem. So put this into some sort of context. Corner Stores has got two warehouses, Warehouse 1 and Warehouse 2. Warehouse 1 is really acting as a national distribution centre for them. So it's got full pallets coming in, full pallets going out, replenishing Warehouse 2, and then there are a whole series of stores which Warehouse 1 is servicing. So that's the example that we're going to be following now. In terms of how it's set up, we can see we've got 172,000 square feet. We've got some V&A racking, some wide aisle racking. We've got some designated marshalling areas for inbound and outbound movements. The operation is currently employing 200 vehicles for both inbound and outbound shipments. We've got 52 staff running across 3 shifts, and we can see that each of those shifts have been allocated certain operations, certain tasks which they need to be doing between in their allocated times, and finally a night shift where we've got the vehicles being loaded. So let's have a look at the data that we've got, and let's just try and build up some sort of decision-making framework then. So the analysis that has already been done, of course, has been commercial analysis, and that's pointed to the fact that the business believes it can gain 10% growth in its sales. We don't have any options. It's 10% is what we want to be doing. In terms of its objectives, I think we can say, it's quite safely say that at the moment it's not going to be looking to change very much, and it's very much a key of whether the business can absorb it. So at the moment the business is doing 6,000 units per week, and we're looking to move that up to 6,600 and maintain at the same time the existing contracted service levels. Tactically, we've decided that yes, we want to use the same real estate. We're not looking to relocate any premises. we'd like to make use of the same vehicle fleet, and of course we want to operationally be using the same staff and maintain our cost base. So we need now to look to see, well, what are the other factors which we need to now consider, and we'll consider those using our computer simulation, and for that I'll be using the class package from Cirrus. So before we go into the application, we need to look to see what base data we need to be feeding into that in order to accurately describe the business. And we can see here some of the things which we need to be inputting. We won't be doing that on this webinar, but these are the sort of things which we need to be picking up. And you can see that if you just scan down some of those things, this is all information that will be available within the operation, going across goods inwards, picking, yard. We're not going to model the yard in this instance, but quite clearly some of the congestion or problem to cope with that 10% actually may be not within the four walls of the warehouse, it may be outside. We can look at different storage locations, so maybe we want to consider some different, maybe we run out of storage, maybe we need to add some different types of racking, etc. We might need to tweak the resources, and look at the goods out loading, see what sort of delivery and shipment profiles we need to be running. And to support that base data, we also need to describe how that's going to be flowing through the business. So looking at the inbound process flows, we can see there some of the ones which are ticked, which is what we're going to be configuring for this particular model. And then likewise we need to be considering the outbound process. Again, we were looking at different ways to build that order, different types of picking. So we've got layer picking, single picks, we've got full pallet picks, got some cage picks going on. We've got some stores going out, so we've got some sort of store-friendly deliveries that we're going to be building there, marshalling that out, and then loading those onto the vehicle. We've got no yard management activities that we're going to be pursuing as part of this case study. Okay, so let's now let me flick into class. So this is the class application, and we're looking now at a 3D image of the warehouse that you saw earlier. If I flick back into 2D, that starts to show you the sort of the layout. So I'd like to perhaps start by explaining some of the features that we have that we're looking at here. Let me just perhaps turn off some of that so we can look at the layout in its first instance. So we can see that we've got two different types of racking, V&A racking and wide aisle racking. To actually draw this, a scale drawing of the warehouse in the first instance is very simple. We can either import a CAD profile so that we can actually draw on top of that CAD image, or you could have some sort of scale drawing, or indeed you could just draw it from scratch really. So we can see that there's a little bit of space to the left of the V&A racking. So if I now just show you, let's just try and add some more racking there. We can see that we've got some static racking. We've got choices of the type of racking that we're putting in there. You can see that it automatically sized with aisles and bays in terms of the as we sort of size it, it's automatically setting that up itself. And then we can have a look at the number of bays that we want to be setting up, changing that to 2 deep, and we can see that automatically configures itself across the profile. Having a look at the aisles, again, if we were to change those to vertical configuration, we can see that everything sort of jumped through there. So quite easy to actually set that up. Not really proposing that we spend a lot of time setting up here. I'm really looking to test out the 10% strategy. So let's delete that and start to go back and look at the simulation. So maybe quite a lot of information to take on board here, but let me just talk you through some of the key things here. So we've got here are the different labour shifts which we've set up. So we've got a morning inbound, morning VNA, morning wide aisle, and some afternoon shifts. We've also got a night loading shift set up down here. And then we can see that we've got, if I just move down a little bit, in terms of goods inwards, we've got goods inwards coming into the business through these allocated goods inwards bays, and we've got an outbound coming out here. Just see that there are various lines here showing how the products are moving through the goods in bays through to the VNA racking, wide aisle racking, and out, etc. And we can set up replenishments and various other different routing information. So let's first of all run the simulation and have a look at the warehouse as it is set up today. So let me start that. Okay, now you can start to see hopefully the webinar supporting the fact that you're seeing some little dots which are little trucks running around, and we can see some vehicles coming in and those are starting to sort of cycle through their day. If we look down in the bottom right hand corner, we can start to see how time is moving through. So we're on day 2, week 1, day 3, and this is all moving obviously quite quickly through the working week. Now what I'm going to do now is just to, if I hide the simulation so that it doesn't present it back to the screen, enables us to run through that a lot quicker. So let's just check out our KPIs now. So this is a whole series of different metrics which are being run on this warehouse that we've just configured. Inbound, we can see we've got 200 vehicles, a little bit of lateness, but we can see that's just a minute or 2 minutes at the worst in terms of inbound deliveries. I don't think we're going to be worrying about that. It all looks pretty good to me. Outbounds, well, we have got a little bit of lateness here. 6% of the vehicles are leaving late as the business is currently running. 32% worst case. We just drill down into that. We can see that that is actually restricted to our VNA out. And our VNA is that's running our full pallets. And that's sort of showing a 17 to 32 minute delay. Now, the business is probably not too worried about that because that's actually replenishing our warehouse too. The wide aisle picking, which is going down to store, that looks to be running perfectly on time. So I think the business is quite satisfied with that. In terms of our labour, we can start to see how the labour is being utilised through the day. We can see we've got red here around the morning VNA, so that's running quite a high percentage utilisation, 99.6%. So that may cause us a little bit of problems later on. Got some MHE usage down here. Ooh, quite high VNA usage, MHE usage, should I say? So we'll have to see how that responds. Okay, so that's the sort of state of play of business as it is. We can now go in and use our what if wizard, and I've set this up to show a 10% increase. So we can now run 10% additional loading. I've kept the animation off, so you can just see in the bottom right it's quickly running through now. Finished. Click back on our KPIs. 10% loading, so we're looking to see 220, yeah, so 220 vehicles coming through. Outbounds, now we've got 10% left late, and we can see the worst case is actually by 1,245 minutes. So we've obviously got a break point here within the business. VNA, that seems to be our culprit. We knew that it was stretched last time, and that certainly seems to be the case. If we have a look down at our labour utilisation, well, it's still the morning VNA which is suffering. Everything else seems to be operating within range. Let's have a look at the MHE. Well, MHE again stretched, quite a lot of things running at maximum. So we might need to give some consideration to maybe some further investment in that area. We can look down here to see whether any CAT tasks have been unfinished, and we can see that in fact the business has processed all of that extra 10% that was needed. We look down at storage areas, we can also see that it's starting to impact, and we've got some wide aisle picking waiting time here. So that over the course of that week, we have seen some congestion that is being built up. So we need to really take some action here. So if we come back to looking at the labour, we can see the morning V&A seems to be the point where we've got some breakage. So let's come and have a look at our morning V&A shift. So morning V&A. Actually, though, I'm saying that, but I'm just realizing that, let's have a look back at our outbound. In fact, the problem's really occurring here. Can we see this? This is actually occurring on the outbound. Now, 2,500 hours isn't something that you've got on your watch or mind, but for the purposes of computer simulation, we're really tying this back to the previous day. So we're saying that we're not tripping into the next day. So this is keeping everything based on a day. So that's why that's showing. But we can see the evening night shift is where the problem is. We know it's associated with the V&A. So let's actually, maybe counterintuitive this, but let's increase the V&A on the afternoon. So let's have a look at our teams. Wrong one. No, that's it. Sorry, I can't. My eyesight's going here. Let me have a look. Here we go. 3 people, not very many people. Let me edit that. Let's just put one other person in. 4. Okay. Good. And now let's run that again now. So running again with the 10%. Okay, here we go. Just whizzing through the day there. Okay, so let's see what impact that's had. Okay, well, we can see that we've actually now brought down our problem again. So we're back now to the 30 minutes late. So we've actually just sort of fixed that back to how it was before. So I think the business is going to be quite happy with that. So we're really proposing that we just need one additional person within that one area of the business. Now, let's just have a look at congestion. We've still got some congestion. So again, it may be that we need to review our slotting strategy. Again, that's a subject of a different webinar, but that's obviously an area that maybe we can recommend that the business looks at. And we also know actually that there's not, the utilization is 74%. Could probably move up a little bit higher, and maybe we've got some options to redeploy people on some of these other shifts which have got lighter work. So it's looking like we've got a means of accommodating our 10%. Let's assume for the basis of this exercise by adding 1 FTE, but we think with some further consultancy we could probably shave that down and remove that altogether. Might be worth, before we sort of close this, just to check to see whether this is going to work and what tolerance we actually have on this. So I'm going to just change that now to 12%. And just run that. Let's just see that whether that can be accommodated. Okay, right, now let's go back to the KPIs. Yeah, so we're still in within that band, so that's looking good. So let's just jump back out, come back into our what if was. Let's just tweak that up to 13%. Run it. Okay, very quickly whiz through that. There we go. Come back in, and our outbounds, and we've just obviously we just sort of collapsed here. Things are now running running poorly. So we can probably safely say that we've got a little bit of tolerance on that demand for 10% growth. So let's go back to our presentation then, and let's present the results back to the business. So I think the nice thing here is we can demonstrate back to the board that we have taken a particular method in terms of solving this problem, and we've then looked at the inbound flows, the outbound flows, we've reviewed labour requirements, we've considered MHE, we've looked at the risks, and we've got some recommendations that we can now present. So if we come back to our matrix, in purple there you can see that we've started to now complete those other sections. So along strategy options, we've actually now got an option there that we can increase by 10%. We can also increase up to 12%, and we're suggesting that above that would require further investment. But at least we've got a little bit of an opportunity to grow that. So from a validation perspective, we're comfortable that that's good for 10% with an element of margin. In terms of our tactics, we've now modeled the business. From an infrastructure perspective, we didn't need to add any more racking, didn't need to extend the warehouse at all, so that's good. We are, however, we're needing 220 vehicles, so we do need to add some more vehicles to our fleet. And we can see that on validation that we're maintaining this 30-minute delay in terms of delivering to warehouse 2. So we might want to give some consideration in terms of what windows we're using there. Maybe we want to delay or spread out some of those deliveries to cut that time down. But I think we're pretty good. Operationally then, we can see again that we've validated that within the model. We've got some congestion that we probably want to consider, but again, that's not getting in the way with our performance. So in terms of our options, we've added one new head. We're going to review improving, perhaps rebalancing some of the people in MHEs across some shifts, and as we've just spoken about, perhaps look at putting in a slotting strategy. So I think that's quite a nice summary that we can present back to the board. We can support that with some of our data. We can look at the inbound and outbound flows, and we've got 3 columns there. So the as was, the 10%, and then the 10% plus 1 FTE, and we can see that our schedules are running on time. And then coming back down to labour and MHE, we can see that we're slightly increasing our cost of a week's operation from 26,208 up to 26,698. So not bad for a 10% increase in throughput, I would think. MHE is going to be staying the same. So pretty good. We could also look back and actually show that in some of the charts. We didn't have time to have a look at some of the charting within the application, but we can see that we can start to look at different profiles, and if required, we could spend more time looking at some of these different metrics within the business. So any questions at that point? I would like to think that we've shown today that computer simulation has a very valuable part to play in validating your warehouse strategy. And I think we can also say that having actually built that model once, as we have done, it's something that we can revisit continually in terms of driving continuous improvement within that business. So I think very good. And I think, of course, reminding ourselves of some of the disasters we saw, and a rather famous notice that was pinned up in a store that's shown to the right here. Hopefully we can prevent some costly business errors. Good. Well, I don't know if we've got any questions. We'll see what questions have come in and compile those now and see if we can answer some of those for you. Before we close, I would like to invite anybody that's interested. We are offering, for people who have attended this webinar, a 5-day trial of the software, which will enable you to perhaps build your warehouse or have a look at sort of a sample warehouse, and then at the end of the 5 days talk to one of our consultants who maybe can help you answer some of the questions that may have arisen through that analysis. Anyway, good. Thank you very much for attending, and we hope that's been of use, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you.